traveler, strength almost gone, that makes me determined to keep pressing on. What sweet consolation from heaven's bright throne, God's wonderful book divine. And I love the old Bible, the precious old Bible, the light of my pathway to shine. And it keeps me so happy, always so happy, God's wonderful book divine.
What chart can you trust as a light to the soul, when tempests would strand you on some dreadful shore? What compass will point you to heaven's bright home, God's wonderful book divine?
And I love the old Bible, the precious old Bible, the light of my pathway to shine. And it keeps me so happy, always so happy, God's wonderful book divine. In case you are wondering of what book I sing, it's the same one the old-time revivals did bring. It's the only one version authorized by the King, God's wonderful book divine. And I love the old Bible, the precious old Bible, the light of my pathway to shine. And it keeps me so happy, always so happy, God's wonderful book divine. Let's sing that chorus if you can jump in with us. And I love the old Bible, the precious old Bible, the light of my pathway to shine. And it keeps me so happy, always so happy, God's wonderful book divine. Amen, Dr. Stringer. I'm glad to have you here. I appreciate you being here, and we look forward to hearing from you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate this so very much, and thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate your prayers. Physically, I feel much, much better than I did this morning, and I'm certainly grateful for that. I'm going to ask you to turn to Daniel chapter 3, and we'll do something a little different tonight. I'm going to appoint all of you a Bible translation committee, and we're going to do some translation work together tonight. See, a lot of times people are afraid of sessions on the King James Bible because they're afraid there'll be a lot of complicated words and things. I try to avoid all that, but I'm going to ask you to get a hold of one term tonight that might be new for you, just one. That word is polysemy. Polysemy is the principle that words can have multiple meanings. Okay? You see that if you go to your dictionary. You open up to a word, and it'll be definition number 1, definition number 2, and many, many words have 5, 6, 7, 8 definitions. It's very possible to find words in your dictionary of 16 different definitions. That's called polysemy. A polysemic language is a language where words can have more than one meaning. Okay? English is polysemic. Hebrew that God gave the Old Testament in is polysemic. Greek that he gave the New Testament in is polysemic. And the biggest job of translators is to say of the possible words that could be the meaning here. Which one does the context show is the meaning here? I don't know if you ever heard of the Russian comedian Yakov Smirnoff here in the United States. Russian is not a polysemic language. So words only have one meaning, and that's just that. And he has a whole 2-hour comedy routine on how hard it is to learn English, because Russian is not polysemic, and English is. He said he first moved to the United States. He was excited to be here. Went to the car dealer, was going to own his first car, made the arrangements to get the car, gets in the car to drive the car off the lot. And he said a light comes in, and the light says, "The door is ajar." And said he didn't know what to do with that, because he knew enough English to know what a door was, and he knew enough English to know what a jar was. But a door was not a jar, and a jar was not a door. He said he had no idea what to do with that light. Okay? Russian's not polysemic, but English is, Greek is, and Hebrew is. So there's a constant challenge of figuring out, and that's basically the King James Bible really starts 85 years earlier with the Tyndale translation. King James Bible reads about 85% identical to Tyndale, and the challenge through all those years was to find what is the very best possible translation. It's not that really that Tyndale's got so many errors in it, as it is you have to ask what's the best possible translation here. So the word in both Hebrew and Aramaic for God is Elohim. You go to Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, Elohim. Okay? That's God. But the word Elohim has 3 possible meanings. So Bible translators, when they come to Elohim, has to ask which of the 3 is the meaning here. Elohim can mean God, the true God. It can mean gods, the fake gods. Or it can mean human judges in their courtroom. I pondered that for years till I realized what that was about. A judge feels like they're God in their courtroom. And so Elohim can mean God, gods, or judges. It is translated all 3 ways in different parts of the Bible, depending on the context. In Daniel chapter 3, the word Elohim is used many times. And in a moment, I'm appointing you the translation committee. I'm going to start reading part of Daniel chapter 3. And when I get to the word Elohim, I'm just going to read it, Elohim. And you're going to tell me which way we're going to translate it at the end of the verse. God, gods, or judges. Okay? Now, the principle is that the context should make it obvious what the meaning is. You know the story of Daniel chapter 3. Nebuchadnezzar, great conqueror of the Mideast at that time, and he fought, set out to conquer 34 different cultures, conquered all of them. Every time he conquered, never lost a battle. Every time he conquered one of them, he would take chosen young men out of that land, known for their intelligence or their skill in something, and he brought them to Babylon to be part of his government. The idea was he'd have the smartest, most talented, most efficient set of government workers of any nation in the world. And there are over 10,000 Jewish young men there. 4 have been noted before. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They have risen to positions in his government, Daniel to high position. We don't know where Daniel is during this story. He's probably off on government business because he has a high position in Babylon's government. Nebuchadnezzar has built a golden image. Secular history records the image looked exactly like him. And there's command, certain time. They're supposed to play music, and they've got all these young men out there. And when they play the young music, they're supposed to bow. Okay? And they've had the first go-round. They've played the music. They've been told to bow. I'm sure thousands of the Jewish young men didn't want to bow. The other cultures, what was the big deal? He had 3 gods or 10 gods or 20 gods. Nebuchadnezzar's, in effect, asking you to add one to the list. What's the big deal? Particularly considering the punishment for not bowing is a fiery furnace. This was a routine way Nebuchadnezzar had for executing people. Nebuchadnezzar was famous for the ferocity of his temper. There's a Babylonian proverb that says when Nebuchadnezzar loses his temper, people die. And a fiery furnace, it was actually, they dig a pit. And the pit was surrounded, both the bottom of the pit was all rock, the kind of rock that would reflect heat, and the walls were with rock. And actually, they'd put combustible material in there, they'd set it on fire, and the rock walls and the rock floor would reflect the fire, radiate the fire. And they would throw people in there, and it's just the nature of our body. When something gives us pain, we pull back. But wherever they pulled back from would just brought them to another place that gave them pain. And they joked and called it the dance of Babylon. And they'd watch the people in their literally roast, jumping back, forth here and there, trying to escape pain they could not escape. That's a pretty serious punishment. And if you have 20 gods already, and you have to add a 21st to escape that punishment, not really a big deal. Except for the young men from Judah, who knew there was one God. And I'm sure thousands of them bowed the knee, didn't want to. They were probably saying while they did that, Lord, forgive me, you know I have no other choice. But there were 3 who would not bow. Well, we pick up when verse 3. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together into the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried about, to you it is commanded, O people and nation and languages. At what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of contemporary Christian music. I'm sorry. I'm the one who messed up there. I added something. Ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. Whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he would be cast in the midst of a burning fire furnace. Certain Jews, whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy Elohim, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. How do we translate Elohim there? God, gods, or judges? Gods, because it's Nebuchadnezzar's Elohim. So we know that. Nebuchadnezzar's Elohim are not the true God. Okay. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they brought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do not ye serve my Elohim, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? God, gods, or judges? Gods. It's really not hard, is it? It's Nebuchadnezzar's Elohim. So it's not hard. Now, if ye be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, it's like, we're going to give you another chance. But if you worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that Elohim that shall deliver you out of my hands? Creator, God, gods, or judges? God. You're not cheating, are you? Because you're looking, it's already been done for you? No. You pay no attention to that. He said, who's the God, who's the Elohim that could save you out of my hands? Because he knew they were Jews. who thought there was only one God. It's the Elohim. Who's the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? And you all get it. It's God. You all knew that. See, what university did you get your degree in linguistics from? Y'all doing tremendous. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we're not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our Elohim, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. Yeah. Not gods, not judges, it's God, plain as day. Okay. But be it known unto thee, O king, we will not serve thy Elohim, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. God's. It's not hard, is it? It's obviously God's. By the way, there's a whole other principle and lesson there. They didn't know what God was going to do when they got thrown into the fiery furnace. Throughout history, there are many, many examples of God miraculously delivering his children for obedience and faithfulness. But there are also moments he does not restrain the wrath of man. They didn't know whether they were going to burn or not. They just didn't know. But they did know this. They were going to be obedient to the Lord, regardless. Man, is there a lesson and a sermon in that? But some other time. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than was wont to be heated. He said, you know how much stuff we throw in there and set on fire? He said, I want 7 times as much combustible material. There. He's mad. He commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, cast them in a burning fire furnace. His chief soldiers, his top warriors, he's really making a public display and a show. He's going to take them to the fire furnace. These men were bound in their coats and hosen and their hats and their other garments. They tied them up in their own clothing and were cast in the midst of burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The fire became so big that the soldiers that take them to the edge to throw them in are killed by the heat and flames. That's how big the fire is. And they, by the way, are the only casualties in this story. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of burning fire furnace. And Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake and said to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound in the midst of the fire? They answered to the king, true, O Lord. Man, what a moment this is about to be. They get thrown in the fire, and the fire burns up the clothes that they're tied up in without touching them. And Jesus comes and walks with them in the furnace. They say, and I'm 69, I'm getting there. They say it's a common thing for old men to exaggerate the stories of their youth. And I'm just getting there where I kind of get where that comes from. Can you imagine Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego meeting as old men and going back to this? How do you exaggerate this story? How do you make it bigger than it was? Y'all remember when they threw us in the fire? And Jesus came and walked with us? Try exaggerating that story and making it bigger. Well, you'll bet they remembered every word he said to them there. He answered and says, lo, I see 4 men loose, and walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Elohim or like the son of Elohim. God, gods, or judges. Kind of has to be, doesn't it? Then why, in all English translations, except for the King James Bible and the New King James, I have to give credit that they got this one right, does it say in all the others, the NIV, English Standard Version, Revised Standard Version, take your pick, it says a son of the gods. So, all of you got it? Why couldn't the translators of those translations want to get it? And I know the answer. I said, well, there's no way Nebuchadnezzar could have known. Really, do you think Nebuchadnezzar didn't understand what was going on? This was a contest between the God of the Jews and his gods. They said, well, how could he possibly have known? They're evaluating and say, we can't translate it God because there's no way he could have known. How do you know that? You don't suppose Daniel would have ever mentioned it. You don't suppose Daniel would have ever called his attention to Psalm 2, which is addressed to the kings of the earth. And the kings of the earth there are commanded to kiss the Son. The word kiss has three possible definitions. It can refer to the kiss, romantic kiss. It can refer to a kiss of friendship, or it can refer to a kiss of submission. And in Psalm 2, it's the kiss of submission. And the kings are told to kiss the Son, to submit to the... You don't suppose Daniel would have ever mentioned that. I mean, well, there's no way the Son wasn't... The truth of the Son wasn't revealed in the Old Testament. Really? You ever read Isaiah? Unto us a Son is given. Or lesser-known passage, Proverbs 30. God's humbling man. And he says, to humble man, he says, tell us God's name if you know. And then the next phrase is, tell us his Son's name if you know. Which means God has a son. Seriously, you think Nebuchadnezzar didn't get it? He's looking at the fourth man in the fire, and Nebuchadnezzar knows he just lost. He knows his gods just lost. I personally believe Nebuchadnezzar gets saved at this moment, but and there are reasons for that, but he knows what's going on. And Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High Elohim, gods are judges. Not really any question, is there? Come hither. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth out of the midst of the fire. Can you see them climbing that wall without feeling the heat? And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being together, saw those men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. They didn't even smell like smoke, which makes them different than some of the people I pastored in Chicago. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel. Do you know what pre-incarnate appearances of Christ are called in the Old Testament? The angel of the Lord. Oh, see, with God here. Gods, or judges. Elohim here is clearly God. The Most High Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Plain as day, we're talking about God. Plain as day, Nebuchadnezzar knows it. Plain as day that he understood. He had been looking at the angel of the Lord. So how could that be? The story of the angel of the Lord, and Jesus is called angel of the Lord over 30 times in the Old Testament. You don't suppose Daniel might have ever mentioned that. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent forth his angel, and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any Elohim, except their own Elohim. It's there twice. The first one is God, small g. The second one, their own God. And now, I have had people say to me, Brother Stringer, you make too much out of Daniel chapter 3. You think I make too much out of it? Let's see how Nebuchadnezzar made out of it. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, gods, or judges? God. Okay? Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill. Because there is no other Elohim that can deliver after this sort. Gods are judges. God. See, in Babylon, like every big city of the time, was just in Israel 2 weeks ago, the 12 gates of Jerusalem, and one of the gates was the dung gate. This was true in every big city. They had a place outside the city where human and animal refuse was taken and dumped. There were wagons on a daily basis that picked up the dung, and because nobody really wanted to be around all that, there was a gate reserved for only one thing, taking the dung out of the city, and it's called, understandably enough, the dung gate. And in Babylon, history tells us, there was a long row of mansions that belonged to the priests of the gods of Babylon. In fact, when Cyrus will eventually conquer Babylon, the very first place his army goes is to the row where all the priests were and their mansions, because that's where the greatest wealth was. And they go loot there first. Imagine one day, what's wrong with the house, the priest of Baal? The whole yard stinks. I mean, you can't walk by there without it being. So, what in the world happened? I said, didn't you hear? So he got up and said that wasn't the Son of God there in the fire. The next thing you knew, he was executed, cut in half, and instead of the dung being carried out by the wagons outside the city, the dung was taken and dumped in his yard at his mansion. So that every time anyone went by, they would notice. Say, you think I make too much of this? So look how Nebuchadnezzar made of it. Now look, y'all did a marvelous job as a translation committee. Y'all got every one of them. So why do the translators of the very popular ESV not get it? Why do the translators of the NIV not get it? Why do the translators of the RSV not get it? I could go on and on and on. Why didn't they get it? You got it. It didn't take 8 years of university study. Y'all got it. It's so obvious. So why didn't they get it? The answer is, didn't want to. If Jehovah's Witnesses, which the Jehovah's Witness Bible reads just like the NIV, just like the ESV, just like the RSV, just like the New American Standard and all the rest of them here, if the Jehovah's Witnesses put the Son of God there, see, they say Jesus was not God, and so he didn't exist before Mary's womb. If they admitted the Son of God was there, what happens to Jehovah's Witness theology? It is destroyed. If they translated this one verse accurately, it would destroy their entire false religion. So they're not going to do it. Doesn't matter how obvious it is, they're not going to do it. So, why do the translators of the ESV and the Living Bible and Good News for Modern Man and on and on and on make the same mistake? Okay? These Bibles are translated by people who do not believe in the deity of Christ. And if they translated this verse accurately, it would destroy their modernist religion. This one verse prevents you from believing what the Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you. This one verse prevents you from believing what the modernists will tell you. So they can't translate it honestly. New King James Version, I believe, was a mistake, but it was translated by saved men. They did know that Jesus was there, and they did not mess that verse up. Now, I ask you a question. Do you trust modernists to translate the Bible for you? Would you trust them in your pulpit? Why not? Preaching's a sacred calling, extremely important. It's got to be accurate. It's got to be. You wouldn't let a Jehovah's Witness come in and preach in your pulpit, would you? Okay. Would you send your young people to a Bible college where their theology professor might be a Jehovah's Witness? Okay. So you really don't want. I'll bet none of you are using the New World Translation because you don't want the Jehovah's Witnesses to translate the Bible for you. So why would you want a Bible that matches their Bible for the same reason? Because the Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in the deity of Christ, and your Bible translators, at least some of them, enough to carry the day, didn't believe in the deity of Christ. Why would you trust them to translate the Bible for you? And y'all got it? Let me show you this principle of polysemy. This one's a little more fun. Go to Hosea chapter 3 and verse 1. The last phrase in that verse is love flagons of wine. The Hebrew word that's translated flagons of wine is a polysemic word. It refers to any fruit of the vine. It can mean grapes, it can mean alcoholic wine, it can mean grape juice, it can mean figs, it can mean dates, it can mean fig juice. Okay? It can mean any of those. And here you see, then said the Lord unto me, go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel who look to other gods. He's condemning worshiping other gods here. And love, this word that means fruit of the vine. They're being condemned for pagan worship and loving this fruit of the vine. But which fruit of the vine do you think the Lord would condemn? In every major English translation except the King James, it says raisins or raisin cakes there, including the New King James. Because you all understand how dangerous raisins are, how much damage they do. You've all heard about those men, they get their paycheck on Friday, they rush right out and cash it, and they blow it all on raisins. You know all the churches that have addiction ministries for folks with a raisin addiction? You've heard about all the marriages that were broken up because of raisins. All the traffic accidents caused by raisins. I was preaching in Alaska on this, and they had me in a hotel there. They'd brought in a nice gift basket in the hotel and all, and so I came in the night I was dealing with this, and I brought in a couple Bible versions, and I read them this verse from those Bible versions where God condemns raisins according to those translators. And then I showed them from the very gift basket the church had bought me a box of raisins. I said, can you believe what your pastor put in my room? Box of raisins. I think you need a business meeting after church tonight. And everybody did what you're doing. They laughed. By the way, if I'd held up a bottle of wine and could have honestly said, look what your pastor put in my room, what kind of reaction do you think I would have got? The context is obvious. There's no reason to condemn raisins or figs or dates or grape juice. That's alcoholic wine in that place. That's the only thing God has a reason to condemn. So why did they translate it raisins? Let's see. Have you ever heard of people who call themselves Christians and claim they believe in social drinking? What would happen to that if you translated this the right way? It would ruin the social drinking defense. Okay. Some years ago, I was pastoring in Chicago at the time. Moody Bible Institute astonished people when they said, we've been studying the scripture and we've come to the conclusion that the Bible never speaks against drinking alcoholic drinks, and so we've changed our college policy. No longer will staff and students be forbidden to drink alcoholic drinks. Is there nowhere in the Bible? No. But if you look at the Bible they were using, Hosea chapter 3 condemned raisins, not alcoholic beverages. I said, they need to pass a new college rule. Students are not allowed to eat raisins. If we're going by this verse, we got to protect our students from the evil influence of too many raisins. It's the dumbest translation in the history of translation. So why do people do it? Because they want to. It fits what they want to say. See, I get this question asked everywhere, including this morning. And very fine to ask the question. People want to know about Easter. The word Pascha that's translated Easter one time in the Bible, the very same word is translated 28 other times, translated Passover. One time it's translated Easter. And people say, well, how can that be? That's got to be a mistake, because 28 times it says Passover. Why should it say Easter? It's a polysemic word. It's a Greek word that means religious holiday. It can be used for any religious holiday. 28 times it describes them going to the temple for a religious holiday. Do you know what religious holiday they went to the temple for? Passover. So very obviously, all those 28 times, it should be Passover. But that 29th time, Herod is celebrating a religious holiday after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which came right after Passover. This religious holiday is in the spring, but it's after Passover. Can't translate it Passover, because Passover just came before. There is a pagan holiday celebrated in the spring that the Roman Catholic Church later came along and tried to Christianize. And by the way, it is not a sin to Christianize a pagan holiday. That's what you ought to do with it. And that holiday, the name for it, even going back to pagan times, was Easter. You want to know why the Bible, the 29th time the word Pascha is used, says Easter? Because it was Easter. And it was not Passover. Okay? This principle of polysemy is a considerable issue, and this is where you get in danger on translation. Because now you're supposed to, well, linguistically it could be this. And people could bring their own value judgments to it. They shouldn't. The context should tell you what it is. And if you like to drink alcoholic wine, you should still come to this verse and say God condemned it. That's only possible. Makes sense translation in Hosea 3:1. Okay? This is why it matters who your translators are. You get a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses translating Daniel 3:25, it's going to be a son of the gods. You get modernists translating Daniel 3:25, it's going to be a son of the gods, because they would destroy their religion if they did it differently. Yeah. Do you think for a second? So these folks messed up Daniel 3:25, but they got everything else right. Seriously, you think that? See, this you hear this kind of, we need one that's new, we need one that's readable, we need one that's this, we need one. How about having a Bible that's accurate? Oh, wait a minute. If I have a Bible that's accurate, I'm going to have to learn some words. That's a shock, isn't it? Some of you aren't old enough to appreciate this. I was a fully grown adult when computers first came out. I thought it was a fad that was going to come and go away. After a few months, I realized, I may have called this wrong. As I'm going to have to catch up and learn computers. The first thing I discovered is that computers have their own vocabulary. There were all kinds of new words I had to learn. Either that or be left behind in the computer era. So you know what I did? I learned some new words. I've watched this over the years in Bible college. It's funny. Young ladies will get interested in young men, and the young men are crazy about football, and football season, they're focused on football. And I may have even let this secret out to some of the young ladies. I said, if you really want to impress the young men, get them to spend time with you, watch football with them. and act like you know what's going on and care. As soon as you're married, you can forget all about it. You never have to watch a football game again. And so I've actually coached some young women at Bible college in football terminology so they don't look like they completely don't know what's going on and can engage. And by the way, it's really effective with the young men. And so they would learn football terminology. I've known men that are airplane pilots. When they went to flight school, they had to learn lots of new words. And why did they learn all those words? Because they thought it was worth it to them. Yeah, I understand. If you're going to have an accurate Bible, you have to do some works. You might have to study and be diligent, which, by the way, is a command of the New Testament. To study and be diligent. So I want one that reads just like the daily newspaper. I want one that's easy. I want one that's simple. I want one where I don't have to do any work. You can't have one, because it won't be the Bible when you get one like that. The King James translators had one goal: be accurate. People say, I don't relate to thee and thou. And y'all understand? Those are translations of words in Greek and Hebrew. Every time you read thee or thou, it's a singular pronoun. It's a singular pronoun. It's the translation of a singular word. Whenever you read ye or you, it's translation of a plural word. So folks debate, Great Commission. Go ye into all the world. Is that given to individuals or to the church? It's a plural word. God gave the Great Commission to you to do together. I don't have to look up the word to find out whether it's singular or plural. The King James Version translators did that for me already. Do you notice in Daniel chapter 3, they got that right every time? So consequently, when I'm reading Daniel chapter 3, I don't even think about it. All that has been done for me by people who were sounder. Remember this morning? To write manuscripts, right men, right method, right doctrine of Scripture. It's been done for me by people who respected what they were doing and knew they were handling the words of God. Because of the King James translators, I don't have to look up every word to find out whether it's plural or singular or whatever. All of that has been done for me. Okay? You say, well, and people ask, shouldn't it, if after 400 years, shouldn't it be redone? To which, in theory, you could do that. But I would respond to that by saying, by who? Who would you trust to do it? A lot of people have said they did that, and it turned out they used a different text than what was behind the King James and different methods, and they came up with something abominable. And that's happened so many times that nobody today trusts anybody to do a real update. Actually, somebody did a real update called the King James 2. I got to give him credit. All he dealt with was archaic words. It was nothing like these translations you see. You know why you don't hear about the King James 2? He borrowed on his house to print it. And nobody wanted it. Went bankrupt and lost his house. And was giving the copies away free. So here's why. See, people complain all the time about how, but here's why he couldn't sell them. The liberals didn't want an accurate update of the King James. They weren't going to buy it. And King James folks were just fine. They weren't looking for something to replace their Bible. There was no market for it. At least twice since then, other people have claimed to do the same thing, and those translations didn't go anywhere either. We say, yeah, but can't we have something new? Why do you want something new? So, and here's what comes out: is I don't want to have to learn those words. Poor baby. I feel sorry for you. Do you want to understand what God said? Do you want? That ought to be one of the most precious things in the world to you. I want the words of God in my language so that I can read them and have the truth of God for myself. And if it means I have to study, I have to study, which is commanded of God anyway. And by the way, it is a precious study. When you get a hold of something new, glory to God. I pastored in inner city Chicago. We had folks saved out of Muslim background, folks saved out of Hindu background, folks saved out of Buddhist background. And they started out not knowing anything. So here's what we did with everybody. Gave them a Bible, made sure they had a Bible, King James Bible. And I said, here's the pastor's phone number. If you're puzzled by something and struggling with it, call me. Well, say, didn't that mess up your day? Sometimes there were more calls than I expected. But I was the pastor. What were they paying me for? Had a lady called one day, Muslim lady. She'd been saved about 2 weeks. And I said that to her. So here's a Bible. You know, you read it. And I said, don't worry about what you don't understand. Don't let it bother you at all. Read till you do understand something and let it bless you. But I said, something really bothers you, call me. She called me one day. She said, Pastor, I'm sorry to call. I'm afraid I have a silly question. I said, there are no silly questions when you've been saved for 2 weeks. I didn't say this, but I'm thinking, when you've been a Muslim for 43 years and you've been saved for 2 weeks, there are no silly questions. She said, is Jesus coming back? She said, I thought I read that in the Bible, and I said, that can't be right, but I think I just read it again. You grew up hearing that. It's no surprise to you. That idea, she had no idea that Jesus was coming back. By the way, 2 weeks ago, I stood on the Mount of Olives where he's returning to. What an emotional moment it was. Thinking, not just that he ascended from here, one day he's coming back right here, and I'm coming with him. She'd never heard that. That was not a silly question for her. Thankfully, she's willing to take time to get the answer. Did y'all get it? Yeah, they say, but I want an easy Bible. You can have easy or accurate. Which one you want? If you want an easy one, they're out there. Just as long as you're willing to miss an awful lot of God's truth and be misled. Okay? There's all kinds of them. So why are there so many? Since 1611, there have been over 1,000 other translations of the English Bible. Over 1,000. There are over 200 in print today. Say why? Well, every time somebody releases a new translation, people run to it because it's new. And they make money for a while. Others are subsidized because they're people who want to make a point. The Christian identity cult that's got some attention, and it's a miserable thing. Do you know the Christian identity cult has a Bible that has a 29th chapter in the book of Acts? You cannot find Christian identity doctrine in your King James Bible. Guess where you can find it? In their Bible, in the 29th chapter of the book of Acts. They'll get you one without you paying the full cost for printing. They have a reason. Jehovah's Witnesses will give you a New World Translation. They have a reason. Did y'all get it? Concept of an accurate Bible. Glory to God, all of that work studying the which word has been done for us. And if in our day and age it takes a little bit of work, people say, well, that's 1611 English. No, it isn't. Many of those words weren't used in 1611. They were never used anywhere outside the Bible. And by the way, people say, oh, those words are archaic. They're not used anymore. There have been 5 billion King James Bibles printed. So apparently those words still are used. Good dictionary will get you the definition of every one of them. There are some special dictionaries just for Bible words. But you can get a good definition of them at any good dictionary. So, but it's so hard. You don't even have to go to the dictionary today. Type it in. And it'll start bringing up meanings of that word. You want an accurate Bible? Or you want an easy one? You can get either. My goal is not to have an easy Bible. but I want an accurate one. I'll close with this story. Some years ago, I had the privilege of going to Syria, militant Muslim country. Long story how I got a visa to go to Syria to preach for a week. But on the grace of God, I did. It was unheard of. When I was coming back into the country, they questioned me for hours because I kept telling them I had a religious visa. They said they don't give religious visas. What were you really doing in Syria? But I got a religious visa. I went there. Just very quickly tell you the story behind it. The pastor of that church had been on an airplane and was sitting next to James Baker, who at that time was Secretary of State of the United States. It was during the first Gulf War when Syria actually fought on the side of the United States. So he's talking to James Baker, who was a Christian, and he's telling him his story. He had been the oil minister for Syria. They brought in an Englishman to teach him how to do oil wells. The Englishman that came in was a Christian and witnessed to him and led him to Christ. He ended up starting a church in his house, resigning as oil minister, and the church was heavily persecuted. He's sitting next to James Baker on the plane. He's telling him this story. James Baker goes in to see Assad, the dictator. That's an Arab custom. They said, we cannot let you do anything for us until we have done something for you. So Assad is saying, you cannot meet with me until I have done a favor for you. And Secretary Baker saying, I'm not allowed by law to accept gifts. And I mean, they're very serious about it. When I went over there to preach, they said, you cannot preach into our church until we've done something for you. I said, tell us what you want to do. I don't know. They took me to a tailor and got me 2 suits. They said, you can't preach in our church until we've done something for you. It's a good idea, by the way, for visiting preachers. Take them to a tailor. But Secretary Baker finally said, I know something you could do that would thrill my soul. He said, whatever it is, we'll do it. He said, stop the persecution of that church. And so Assad issued an order that that church was never to be bothered by agents of the government. So they were open and had a building. It's unheard of. And other churches were underground churches. So they were allowed to bring an American preacher in to preach. So I'm there, and an Iranian preacher heard that there was an American preacher in Syria. He never heard of such a thing. Free commerce between Iran and Syria. Never heard of such a thing. He'd always wanted to meet an American preacher. So he came to Syria. It was fascinating. He came up. They weren't expecting him. They had me in a 2-bedroom suite in the hotel. So they let him stay with me. And he didn't speak any English, and I don't speak any Farsi. You could have done a situation comedy of us trying to communicate with one another. It was hysterical. His ministry, he was a Bible smuggler in Iran. You say, why smuggle Bibles into Iran? There is a Bible in Farsi that's legal in Iran. You know why it's legal? Comes from the United Bible Societies that you're like your NIV and your ESV and all that. And it doesn't have the deity of Christ in it, and it doesn't have the blood atonement in it, so the Muslims didn't mind. So why was he risking his life to smuggle a different Farsi Bible into Iran? 2 years later, he got caught. In order to guarantee he would never smuggle a Bible into Iran again, they cut off both of his hands at the wrist. So he could not carry Bibles in anymore. Why would he go through something like that when there was a legal Bible in Iran? Because he wanted the people to have a Bible that told the truth about the plan of salvation. Amen. And the Trinity and the deity of Christ. And he considered that worth the risk of his life. Because he wanted them to have an accurate Bible. We got Christians sitting in our churches that take inaccurate Bibles just because they're lazy. Which one do you think I respect more? Him or them? God bless y'all.
If I could summarize all of that in this, it comes down to sin. Some brilliant man that I heard speak on Friday said this: I'm being humorous. But he made this statement that he was thankful for this Bible because it gave him a standard that's greater than me, that I have to live up to. Accurate as he said. And in being accurate, sometimes you know what it does? Points out things that I'm doing wrong. And that's why they've gone to so many different versions, because they don't want to give that up. Like he was talking about the wine. All right, and so the question comes to us, and I know we all battle this sometimes. When the Lord speaks to us from this Bible that we say is the Bible we hold to, and we look at what the Holy Spirit convicts us of, and we say, I'm not sure I want to give that up. Are we any better than someone that's holding an NIV? If we won't change with what this says, the point is, when we see this, we are supposed to see ourselves for what we really are and change into the image of Christ. And so it really, and I know there's people that battle with us, that when we see things, all of us see things in the Word of God that we need to change, and we say we're not going to because we're stubborn or whatever, we're really writing our own version of the Bible and saying, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. One man said it this way on Friday in discussion. We were chuckling about it. He said, in today's terminology, I hold to the King James Bible because I'm not transversion. I don't have to go to the NWT, the NLT, the NIV, the ESV, the MICKEY, MOUSE. All right. But I hold to the King James Bible, and I go back to where we got our name from. If we don't keep preaching this Bible, the King James Bible, we will cease to be a church. And someday, like we have done with the Jehovah's Witness building that was here before, somebody else will be preaching on why they hold to the King James Version, because our church will cease to exist at that point. All right, so we're going to hold to it. And if somebody ever comes to you from our church or from outside the church and says, hey, you need to check out this version, or you need to check out so-and-so that I've read and listened to, they got a really good point here, and it's not from this, flee them. Go get somebody else and go back with them, or to them with somebody else, and say, let's look at this, because our church isn't going to go for that. And that's how the devil will get in here. He's not going to get in here because I'm going to protect with my life that this is what's preached here. So the devil is going to try to use through you little word, hey, this guy's really got something good to say about this topic from this other version. Be careful of that. All right? We go back to the chili illustration. I want something that's pure. So hopefully today was an encouragement to you. It was super encouraging to me. And can I use the newspaper illustration you used Friday? He referenced it, and I thought he was going there. But he said, when I don't remember the whole illustration, but in a time of distress, trial, he went to his house and hotel room, whatever, and was sitting there. And, you know, as he referenced, easy to read like a newspaper. He said he sat down and there is a King James Bible there, and there is a USA Today sitting there that reads awful like a newspaper. And he said, guess what? In a time of trouble, which one I picked up to read? Not the one that was easy to read like a newspaper. So I'm thankful for my Bible. I hope you've gotten a little bit of encouragement as to why we hold it. If you ever have questions, we've been more than happy to talk with you about it. There's so much more information. It's not really, you could never summarize it in a day or two. There's a lot out there, but it comes down to what he preached this morning on why we hold to it. And this is the Word of God. So thankful for